we're welcoming our 6 panelists who I will introduce shortly, and we're just going to get into a couple of opening slides. So very briefly, one slide on us. We're Producing for the Planet. We are a coalition of now 98 independent media producers from across Canada, production companies, line producers who are all taking a commitment to work towards climate change in the industry, climate action. We just launched our first big report a couple of weeks ago. We had 70 production companies report, and we got an enormous amount of data. We're really excited about that. So all of it helps us move our industry forward, to figure out where producers are getting stuck and where we can help them take their next steps. For today, we're going to do 2 brief slides, just a minute or 2 on where we're at with waste in the industry. We'll get into some speaker introductions. We're going to give each speaker a few minutes to introduce themselves and what they work on, so that you have some context for why they're here, you know, how they're relevant to our industry, and what we're going to talk about today. Then we're going to get into a panel discussion with a few different key themes and lots of questions, and we have lots to share in that. There will be a Q&A moment after the panel, but I would also say that if you have questions throughout the panel, please add them in the chat so that we can bring them up in the moment that they're being discussed. And I will monitor the chat to flag questions for the panelists as they're coming. So don't feel like you have to wait to the Q&A at the end. We'd love to hear what you're thinking throughout. And I hope to wrap us up just over the hour, quarter after the hour, 10:15 if you're on the West Coast, 1:15 if you're in Toronto here where I am. Would love to give everybody, you know, a little bit of time back. I know we scheduled this until 1:30, but we'll try to wrap up a little bit earlier for you guys. So that is our schedule for today. Great. And just to get everybody briefly involved for a minute, if you can locate the chat and you'd like to, please feel free to introduce yourself and where you're calling from. We have a panel from across Canada. We have attendees from across Canada. We're really proud that we're a national coalition. We're involving producers from all corners of the country. And that's going to be something that we talk about a little bit today, the regional differences and what different regions are working on and able to work on. So if you'd like to locate the chat, please feel free to introduce yourself, and we can see all of our attendees as well. Perfect. Thank you, Astra, for getting us started. A big champion in sustainability in our industry. All right, so as people are introducing themselves, I am going to jump us into our first slide. So just very briefly, this is data from CBC's most recent industry report on production carbon emissions. We can see here, of course, the different emissions categories. Travel and transport, we all know, is a significant contributor to production emissions. We're here today to talk about the materials line. So that's 16% of production emissions, production carbon footprints. And there's a lot of opportunity to tackle this and reduce this. So that's going to be our focus for today. Of that almost 16%, here's a breakdown from CBC's report. Now, of course, every production is different depending on the genre. You have, you know, docuseries that don't have sets are not going to have a lot of wood and textiles. You have, you know, I know that the children's genre is more heavy in material. So we know that this changes by genre, but this is one of the average data sets that CBC reported on last year. So that kind of helps us frame some of the conversations that we're having for today. And so, yes, we know we're not here to talk about the huge problem that we know exists. We know that there's a ton of material waste coming off of sets. We know that there's a lot of opportunity to do things better. We know that producers are looking for these opportunities and best strategies. And so what are we going to do today? We're going to talk a little bit about how materials are actually recycled. And this will be not just from a production industry perspective, but also in general. You might even learn things about your own residential recycling programs and try to lift the veil beyond, you know, what people bring their bins to the curb and then they never think about what's happening to their recycling again. So we're trying to make the invisible a little bit more visible. We're going to talk about the power of good recycling and composting. So, you know, it's not just because we think we should do it, but there's actually a really, really inspiring and exciting reason and vision for what this looks like if we're all doing this more. We'll be talking about strategies to reduce and salvage set materials, thinking about circularity even as early as the design phase and what that looks like. Creative, cost-effective approaches to waste diversion. We know budgeting and resourcing is the #1 concern for producers, and so we will touch on that today. And then we're going to end with what a truly circular production model looks like, and this will be a little bit of an inspiring vision that we're working towards. So with that, I'm going to start us off with our first speaker, Kelsey, and we're going to share a couple of slides on what she's working on, and then we'll go through our speaker introductions quickly, just a few minutes for everyone, and then we'll get into our panel. So Kelsey, take it away.
Hi there, I'm Kelsey. I'm the owner of Keep It Green Recycling. My background was actually the film industry. I worked up to be a first assistant production coordinator. I noticed there was a great need for a waste program in the film industry. So I started Keep It Green Recycling in 2010. We just started off first with like recycling bins inside offices. So it would be all the different departments, so like stunts and costumes. We set up a waste program that was designated just for them. And then we started doing on-set recycling, where we started training the crews on how to recycle on set. So we did the 3-bin system. So we made it super simple to make it easy and like the same across the board. We also opened up material reuse for Keep It Green. So any production that is done with all of their stuff, so it could be set deck, construction waste, costumes, even the production office has stuff, they can send it to our warehouse and we charge a fee to drop it off, but then we give it all away for free. We give it to nonprofits, the community, churches, schools, other productions can come and pick it up. So that's been going since about 2016 and it's been doing it's doing pretty good. I think we could see more. The next slide. Yeah, and then we can also provide a diversion report, which is on the left-hand side there. So if your show is done after 6 months or 3 months, we can total it all up and give you a diversion report. For the material reuse, this is what we've taken in for the past since 2018, so maybe it's 2018 I started that. Last year, this 2024 was a smaller year, but yeah, we seem to see it increase every year. Next slide. We've also partnered, sorry, Erin, you were gonna be a part of it, so I didn't include you. We partnered with Greener Sets, which does commercial recycling. So all the recycling waste comes back to us and we sort through it so it can be properly recycled, because any set recycling that is being recycled, it's usually quite contaminated and needs to be gone through. Rentals, we now do rentals with another rental company. So if you need any recycling bins or even just bins for the office, we can provide that. And then our new thing is actually providing totes for set. Anything that comes out of those totes comes back to Keep It Green Recycling, where we sort through it and take out all the contaminants. We'll find anything where like batteries or reusable items or just a lot of food. So we try to like make sure that the recycling is clean enough to go to the processor. And we also work with Urban Jacks, which is the recycling about him.
Aaron will have a chance to introduce himself as well. So I didn't line him up next. Maybe that would have been a good segue, but we're going to go to Arjun next to learn about plastic recycling.
Thanks, Angelica. Hi, all. My name is Arjun. I'm at EFS Plastics. EFS Plastics is a post-consumer plastics recycler. We receive end-of-life plastics that all of us place in the blue box. We recycle polyolefin plastics, so that is polyethylene and polypropylene. If you've looked at a plastic container, on the underneath, you'll see a number 2, number 4, and number 5 sign. Those are typically the types of plastics that we recycle. We don't recycle PET water bottles. Next slide. So EFS Plastics, we've got a 4 main companies. We've got 3 processing sites and a 4th custom molding facility. The 3 processing sites are in Ontario, Alberta, and Pennsylvania, and then we have a custom molding site, which is where we manufacture certain products at EFS, which is in Centralia, Ontario, about 45 minutes northwest of London. We also have EFS Equipment, which is a design and manufacturing division where we design and manufacture our own equipment. And then we're also a product owner through Listwell Plastics. We have some products on Canadian Tire shelves, which have our branding. Next slide. So this slide just shows you a lot of the locations that we currently source our plastics from. As I said, we are a post-consumer plastics recycler. So when all of us put our detergent bottles or our yogurt cups in the blue box in our recycling bins, it then goes to a material recovery center where they're sorted. Our blue box typically, they accept paper, metals, glass, and plastics. And so it then goes to the MRF. The MRF separates out the plastic streams, and then there's typically 3 to 4 different categories, subcategories that they separate into, and then we purchase those bales, and it comes into one of our 3 plants. The different colors that you see on the map here are all the locations that we currently source our scrap plastics from. So we're not in BC. There is another recycler that services BC, but between Alberta and Newfoundland in Canada, and then across the northeastern states in the US is where we primarily source from. Next slide. So the top part of the slide just shows you what we currently purchase our bales of plastic from. So when you put them in the blue box, when all of us place them in the blue box, and then they go to the recycling center, they subcategorize into mixed rigid plastics or HDP bottles. HDP bottles, anything with a number 2 sign. Mixed plastics is everything else, and then we bring in film bales as well. So that's how we bring in the raw material bales, and then after we've recycled them, they are converted into a resin format, and then those resins are then sold to various manufacturers. Next slide. Further on the rigid side, so we recycle HDP plastics and polypropylene plastics. Those resins are then sold to manufacturers, or we use them ourselves at EFS, and then they're manufactured into either durable plastic applications or consumer product goods. Like it goes back into detergent containers, pipes, waste and recycling bins, planters, etc. And then we have the ability to custom color and compound if they need us to. Next slide. On the film side, so a lot of the film bales that we receive, film plastics that we receive get converted into those resins. So the pellets you see on the left side, and then those pellets are sold to various film manufacturers. When I say film manufacturer, this is flexible film manufacturers. So if you've ever seen stretch wrap that is used around to protect packaging, or shrink bundling film on water bottles, or trash liners with, if you've seen trash liner boxes with PCR in them, that PCR would typically come from our plant. And they're previously, it is a reused plastic. Next slide. And then EFS, we do custom molding. So really what this means is the individual owns the part, the individual owns the mold. We just make it for them. The below are some of the examples of products that we currently make at EFS. So if you're out of Ontario, you would have seen the orange and black pylons on the highways. We make those. They're 100% made with recycled plastics, all from the blue box. And end of life, they can come. All of these products at end of life can come back to us, and we process them all over again. And that's it, I think. Next. Yep, you're good there.
Awesome, Arjun. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Okay, next we're going to go to Laura. And Laura, I'm just going to stop screen sharing so that you can present what you're working on, and then we'll go back to Aaron's slides after.
Thank you, Angelica. Yeah, hi. I'm in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and I operate a circular economy brick and mortar shop, but my passionate career trajectory is in the film industry, and have worked in the film industry. So I've been sort of straddling the sustainability lens, and I've sought a grant and succeeded in getting a grant to hire an intern who is doing a lot of the heavy lifting in developing a template for our region, whereby we'll be connecting the dots of such industry mavens and heroes as Arjun and Aaron and Kelsey, who have sort of already created solutions, but some of those solutions aren't being tapped into. So we're effectively doing a whole lot of research and connecting the dots. And fortunately in Nova Scotia, we do have a really robust diverting organization that's actually a not-for-profit corporation. And they, since 1996, have been really pioneering stages of sustainability, such that what used to be very common plastic bags in grocery stores, for instance, the ubiquitous means for carrying our food no longer exist in Nova Scotia. And when I was recently in Ontario, I was kind of shocked to see how many plastic bags were still in use. So the one-time disposable plastics, I'm looking more at the means of changing behavior rather than providing solutions. I'm no expert in what to do with those plastic pellets, but I would like for our industry to have a very unadulterated, clear roadway map to what is the most successful route for all of the material goods, and accounting for the life cycle of those material goods. So we intend to have a deliverable in 2 months' time that identifies what's the most effective distribution channel for all of those material goods that enter a site, and just raise the consciousness of all heads of department and thus all crew members, so that we as a full organization, a full industry, can chip away at reducing the carbon impact.
Super. Thank you, Laura. We're excited to hear more about that roadmap in the panel.
Thank you.
We're going to go over to Joe. Joe, why don't you introduce yourself? Let us know what you're working on, where you're working on it. And then I'll bring the slides back up for Aaron next.
Yeah, hi. My name is Joe Madziak. I'm a construction coordinator with IATSE 873 here in Toronto. My big passion is to try and keep things out of landfill. A few years ago, I was on a show, and after we ordered our second 40-yard bin for the day, I suddenly started paying attention to that, thinking, my God, we've put an awful lot of stuff in waste. So I went back on that show and figured out it was 150 metric tons that we had sent to landfill. And then I looked on the IATSE website, and there was 39 productions going on in the city. And I thought, oh my God, you tally that up, and that's horrendous. And I actually, when you, Angelica, you put those statistics out for that one show, I kind of argue, I'd like to know what show that was, because to me, I outweigh the food waste. There's no way food's sending 2 40-yard bins a day to landfill, right? So I think we are the biggest offenders, and so therefore I think we have to take the sort of the biggest changes. So in terms of waste management, I try and use the clean wood bin, and we're recycling organics. We're very good at that. We're recycling plastics, but that's all small change compared to the amount of wood I have. So the number one priority for me is circularity, is trying to reuse it, keep it totally in-house, keep it being reused. And so like on a series, trying to reuse as many set pieces as possible. In an ideal world, you'd have an exit plan for every piece of scenery, but I don't think with the pace we go and the number of diverse sets we're doing on a typical series, I'm not sure how possible that is in the near future, but my goal would be to at least reuse and get several lifetime uses out of a set piece and out of flats. We used to do this way back when in the studio, we used the studio model, but I think real estate and rental has just gotten more expensive. And I think in order to pull this off successfully, you need a space to store stuff, and you need a little more time when you're striking sets so you can pull things apart properly. Those are the two things I'm constantly pushing for. There's a group in Toronto that we've been meeting. Some of the people on this call are involved, but there's some very passionate players in Toronto. And I'll let Aaron talk about our website there. He knows more about it. But we are pushing to try and get someone to donate or help us out with the business plan in terms of having a multi-use, having a warehouse that many people can use, much like Kelsey has, but just with scenery, with flats and set pieces.
Great, thanks, Joe. We'll put that call out to the group, see if that seed sprouts for the warehouse. Super, thank you, Joe and Laura. We're gonna go over to Aaron now. I have a couple slides here.
Yeah, those of you who know me know that I'm about to go rogue. So yeah, there's some slides up here that you'll see, but I'm gonna grab this fancy device here, and I'm gonna show you what we actually do instead of talk about it with some slides. A bunch of oops on camera. I'm not one of you guys with this stuff. Yeah, what we do is awesome. And because of all of you, I will do it probably in the fastest tour ever. But we take pieces of wood from sets like, could be this 1x4, 2x4, fasteners, everything can be in it. And we join it up into new lumber up to 20 feet long. So can everybody see?
Maybe I'll stop screen sharing to see what kind of journey Aaron is taking us on right now. Oh, here we go. I'm going to unpin Aaron in Office and pin his tour camera here. And
all right, can you hear me? Yes, no, can you hear me?
Yes, Aaron, we can see you on your site now.
All right, the bins actually come in just like this one. Everybody's familiar with a 25 or a 40-yard bin. These ones are covered, and they're really pretty much at shops like Joe's or any of the studios to keep it dry. And then the trucks simply bring them in here. Our competition is the dump. Our competition is the landfill. The haulers, all they need to do is bring that bin here. Hi, Estra. Bring that bin in here, drop the wood, and then our team takes it, measures every single board with our fancy laser and sensors, removes the fasteners manually. Some sections we just cut out. We put all of the metal here for recycling, prepare it for the next phase, which is palletizing it. And so after it's palletized, we then go inside the shop to join it up into new lumber. But essentially, this process is the delta. This is changing the way things have been done, because instead of burying it, or in a better case, chipping it or burning it, we give it a second life cycle. So there's a 3 or 4 minute video in the links that I sent you about our purpose and mission. And we're right here, by the way, in downtown Vancouver. You can see Science World.
Yeah, super.
You can see our team members who study at Emily Carr Art University. They can see their fancy work on our buildings. So after that happens, it's diverted. We kept the material in play. From there, we simply put it into our fancy machines, feed into that system, put a profile like that, and press it into a brand new board, 20 feet long, or any length you want. If your set is building only 12 footers, we'll give you 12 footers. And then it's molded into 4-side square, meaning that once it comes out, there's no banana boards. It's just a little bit of a tiny little bit undersized from the original, but it's perfectly straight. And so right here, represents, I guess, what you're talking about there. Just one of those, 2 of those 40-yard bins.
Wow.
You can recycle it and put it back into play. And so, yeah, we use real life wood scientists, just like this guy, Oral, right here. And we're proudly Canadian. And as I go back to the office here, I just want to say that for us to do what we do requires community. And that community is you guys. It's a community of people who, when we started this a few years ago, we said, hey, how can we improve the situation? So Joe, Kelsey, Astra, and all of you who are here on the call today are part of the solution. And so, hey, I'm back over here. And so I wanted to say we just need to change the behavior. We need to follow like what Joe's talking about and improve that status quo. And so what Kelsey does, what others do is a 3-bin system. All we're talking about now is a 3+1. Just recycle your wood. It's that simple. And the value proposition is pretty fair. Why are you throwing it in the dump when you can give it a second life and even have a better product in the end? So yeah, you'd either have to be crazy or something else to do this. And until every production is diverting their wood into a proper bin where we can put it back into play, it's not actually recycling, it's just ending life cycles. So thank you all for listening to the Urban Lumberjack Show today.
That was a very, very exciting impromptu tour. Thanks, Aaron, for getting us all out of our virtual seats for a few minutes. Okay, well, I'm just going to go straight to Shane now for our last introduction. Shane, I also want to mention that Rethink has sponsored this webinar, so thank you, Rethink, for helping us get these conversations out to the industry today. You know, I've personally worked with Shane a lot here in Toronto and in Ontario, so we're grateful for your support on this, and take it away.
Yeah, I don't know how well I can follow Aaron there, but I can tell you, Aaron, when you come to Toronto, we'll make room for you in the yard, man. I love what you're doing. I love your vibe and I love what you're doing. So I'm in my home office, so I can't do the same thing, but I'm going to steal that on the next webinar I'm on. I'm going to be in my yard, do that same thing. I'll give credit to you though, Aaron. So, you know, I think I want to echo what Aaron said about the community, and one of the coolest things. So Rethink started nine years ago, 9 years and a bit ago in my garage in Toronto, and we've grown to the most sustainable waste diversion provider that I know of in North America. I know it's a bold statement. If anybody thinks there's somebody better out there, let me know, because I want to get to know them and then just make our process better. And but in 2020, we got into the film business, and it was really awesome, the people that I met and how much they care about sustainability. So we've been providing services since 2020, and we sort of evolved what we do. We do handle all waste for everybody, but as it relates to the film industry, you'll see in these pictures. So we have construction bins, and so we do mixed construction waste, but back at our yard, stuff gets sorted out for the lumber. And probably, Aaron, a lot of that, like right now, most of that lumber will go off to mulch or waste to energy. So it is diverted from landfill, but we focus on how do we use waste at a higher level, a higher value, right? So obviously urban jacks would be a higher value. It's going back into the system. And then the second picture is some custom signage setups we made. So we rent bins and signage to productions. And so we service studios, we service locations, we service sets. An interesting story about the circular economy is, so we provide bags as well. So like compostable bags and the plastic recycling and waste bags. And we figured out, we've been working with Arjun for a very long time. So we recycle plastics, or we collect it. We sell plastics to Arjun's company. He recycles it. And we figured out that the company that we buy the bags from buys Arjun's resin. And we didn't even know that was going on. You know, so I'm excited that Arjun's here, because plastic's got a really bad rap. And I'm not saying we can't reduce in all of those things, but it's not all bad. And then the last picture is you'll see Oriki doing a hand sort. And so that's the service we provide not only for the film industry, but also for restaurant and food service that we're heavily involved in. And that's sort of how the business, grew mostly. I'm actually excited to say that we're about to do a pilot in the next maybe 6 months where we're looking at some AI robot sorters to make that more efficient, because oftentimes when you're doing things on a smaller scale like this, it costs money. So we're always focused on how do we bring more value or drive down costs, because we're often up against, oh, well, it's this much just to throw it in the landfill, right? So next slide. So we spent last year doing full carbon accounting. And so this is one of the reasons I say that we're the most sustainable waste diversion company out there. And as I learned, a lot of that was actually through the film industry as well, as I learned the impact of the things that we do. We've always tried to do the most sustainable thing, but what does sustainable mean? So in the Greater Toronto area, 80% of the waste is transported to Michigan to a landfill. So those big, huge trucks with the 7 axles, like it costs a carbon ton of diesel fuel to get it there. And so for an entire year, we went through all of the things that we collect and where the stuff goes. And then we calculated the diesel emissions to pick it up. Though we're transitioning to electric, we still have diesel trucks. So the diesel emissions to pick it up, and then where does it go? So for the example of a lot of the recyclables, some of it we sort out and we bale and we bring it to EFS in Listowel, Ontario. Some of it will go to a MRF. So we kind of cherry pick the better stuff, the better value stuff. But that's an example of why do you want to work with a company like Rethink is, so we're a Canadian company, we pick it up, we bring it to EFS, which is 2 hours away, and then they bring it to EFS Plastics, which is all within the Canadian economy, and they're making new products with it, right? So for any different type of waste that we collect, we've got the math on how much carbon it takes to pick it up, transport it, and what we've done with it. And Arjun can correct me later, but I'm pretty sure what we learned is that if you have a recycled plastic, you're saving 66% of the carbon versus using a virgin plastic with oil. So like we figured that stuff out. Sorry, I should say we figured it out. I say, hey, I'm just a garbage man or a truck driver. I know a lot of really smart people that have figured a lot of stuff out for us that have helped us put this math together, right? And next slide. And so this is the next evolution of our diversion report. So we always gave a diversion report that said, this is the waste we picked up. This is where it went, whether it was hand sorted or not, or whatever the case may be. And then we gave a percentage. But now it's evolving. Most big corporations want your actual carbon accounting as their scope 3 emissions. And so, we've really focused on, and back to the metric at the beginning about food being after transportation, which we factor in transportation for our carbon accounting, but food itself being, the next biggest source of emissions. It's not so much the waste. It is not so much the waste, but it's the food consumption itself, right? And all of that. So that's kind of what we do. This is not, I shouldn't say it's not live. We have used this once or twice, but we're perfecting it. And what I would also like to share is that after all of that research we did last year, we figured out that we've diverted so much waste from landfill that we're actually carbon negative. And so we haven't made that public yet. We're in the process of getting third-party verification for that because there's legal blah, blah, blah. But maybe we missed something. Maybe they're going to poke a hole, but then we're going to figure it out and fix it. And that's what makes us the most sustainable.
Thank you, Shane. Awesome. All right, I'm going to stop screen sharing here, and then we're going to go into our panel discussion. And before we do that, I just want to tie a little bit of what we've heard from, the vendors here, the people who are working in the film industry here on this panel. there are solutions out there. These solutions are existing. There are people working really hard on them. There are people in our industry, outside of our industry, working really hard to make material waste and material recycling and a circular economy more commonplace in the film industry, and really dedicated to looking at the kind of material waste that's coming off our sets, or even coming out of location, whether that's food packaging waste or the emissions that came from your food meal on the go because everyone's on the road and you're getting food to go. So there's a lot of really good solutions out there. They're not always in a production's budget, but we're going to talk about that. And so the next part of our webinar now is going to go into a couple of really key questions. We know these are questions that productions have. And again, I want to encourage everyone to put some questions in the chat if you want to know specific things from the panelists that maybe aren't coming up. And we'll make sure we cover them because we want to make these solutions more accessible to everyone. We want to talk about the budget barriers and how you can do it on a budget or depending on whatever price point you're at. And that's what we're here to talk about today. So we're going to jump into our first question. And the first question is just to kind of level set on the status quo. If you are hiring a regular waste vendor on your production, so not a Kelsey or a Shane or an Aaron, and you're hiring just the regular waste pickup guy, what is happening to that waste? Where is it going? And what are the pros and cons of that? And let's start with Kelsey in the BC area, and then we'll go to Shane in Ontario, and then anyone else can jump in on where our waste is going from productions if we're not implementing sustainable solutions from that starting point. You're on mute, Kelsey.
There we go. In BC here, well, Metro Vancouver, we actually have two places processors. We got Merlin's and Urban Impact. So all our waste actually goes there where it gets sorted through belts and stuff like that. And then obviously made into new products after. But yeah, literally any hauler that you hire here, that's where the stuff is going at the moment. But I think Aaron could talk about the wood waste. I'm not really sure all the processors here.
Okay, so even if BC producers are hiring regular waste haulers, they're going to the correct recycling facilities.
Yes.
Okay, great to know. Good. Okay, and Shane in Ontario, is it the same? Is it different?
So I'm going to tell everybody a secret here. There's some shady people in the waste business, and there's the average waste hauler. Speaking about Ontario specifically, but the average waste hauler, all the big ones, they own landfills in Michigan. So, they're not in EFS Plastics, so they're not making money off of doing that. And even actually, we were looking at companies in Vancouver, and I could tell you, I met one in particular, and they told me that they have recycling in all these different bins, but for efficiency, rather than send, I don't know what the sort system is in BC, but even let's say if we're just talking about compost, organics, recycling, garbage, rather than send 3 trucks, let alone a wood waste bin, it's easier just to send one and dump it all. And so there's companies that'll tell you, hey, we sort it out. If anybody knows how a compaction truck works, you're dumping waste in there and it's just compacting it, right? So nobody's sorting that stuff out. It's gross enough doing it when you're just picking it up non-compacted off of site. So I would say in many cases, this stuff is just going to landfill, especially in the film industry. It's very specialized. When we started, they're like, can you pick up in Dundas, Ontario at, between 6 and 7 a.m. on a Sunday morning because we finish at 6 and church starts at 7 and that's the location. So, the average company, isn't giving that sort of specialized service and then making sure that it's being diverted. And the other one is even some companies that say they're doing this stuff, even some companies that say they're doing this stuff, we've worked with people where they're like, oh, we asked them if we could see their place and they said it's proprietary. Well, what's proprietary about sorting cans out from bottles, right? So if somebody won't show you what they're doing, if they can't tell you, oh, we sort this out and we bring it to Arjun, and they can't tell you all that stuff, then it's probably not going somewhere, right? So now I would say that there's other companies for sure that are doing stuff, but I would urge everybody to ask the people what they're doing and where the stuff goes, because there's people, you know, like Kelsey, that are working very hard to do it, and we're competing against companies that are like saying, yeah, we'll take care of it. Well, how are they 50% of the cost? Like, do they think Kelsey and I are rolling around in like Rolls Royces and stuff? No, right?
Aaron, how does it work for wood? If we're not using someone like Urban Jacks, where is wood waste going when it's getting pulled off sets?
Well, I'll start with saying nobody in this call is here to shame one another or shame productions, because we're all here to improve the status quo. I'm not going to use terms like greenwashing, because everyone's trying to put their own perspective, but I will apply a green filter, a green lens that says everybody talks, but exactly what, echoing everything Shane said, transparency is key. I walked out the door, you saw how and what we do, and that's open to all of us. So applying a green filter doesn't count, because you have to just look around and say, we don't do that. And the reason I'm saying we don't do that is because actually someone Kelsey introduced me to, looking at the Zero Waste British Columbia initiatives. Last week at a municipality meeting, we had a discussion, and the consensus was terminology. And terminology saying we recycle wood, or it's disposed of in the most sustainable way, is simply terminology. It means that there's really only 3 avenues. Most often, whatever is cheapest, in the echoing what Shane said, it goes into shady avenues. However, if it wants to go in a clean route, it's either chipped for mulch or hog at the landfills, or it's burned for what they say is clean energy, but mostly it goes to a concrete facility. And so everybody is getting paid on the waste management side, and the haulers are doing their job to simply haul. And when you look at large corporate brands that are saying we are sustainable waste management, actually they're haulers. They own landfills because they need a place to haul their stuff too. And now that's the economy we've created. So where is it going? Mostly to the dump, which is our competition on the reuse, and also burning for concrete, which is a major contributor towards the problem. So to call out Jamie from Kelsey will remind me of his company name.
Happy Stands Recycling.
From them. He says, let's call recycling, and let's call burning, and let's call burying. And so, speaking with another friend who's not on the call today from Toronto yesterday, he was on a rant because exactly the issues of economics. Productions don't really want to pay. Joe is the leader because he knows that it pays off to plan for sustainability. It pays off in all phases, from when it's a green light to say, here's how we're going to do this. And so it requires courage. And every one of us has courage to call out those that say, we don't do that. We don't send this to the dump. We don't pay $750 because ethically should be $1,400. Just look at the riders, look at all of the waste that happens at different areas of the production. And if we really measure correctly, we're in zero land of the budgets. Be like Joe. Do it right.
So a couple of takeaways there that are going to lead into our next question. The first is on transparency. So it's something that everyone can do regardless of your budget, is ask your waste vendors, where does it go? And to Aaron's point, be listening out for that terminology. Disposed of doesn't specify. Is it recycled? Is it burned? Is it, sent to landfill? And so that's something that everyone can do that costs nothing. And even if they aren't doing the right things yet, being asked about it and hearing that people are paying attention and have that demand is already a step in the right direction. And that's something that we can all do with all of our waste vendors going forward, is to make sure they know that these are the types of things we're starting to learn about and care about and really want to see improve off of our productions. The other piece that I heard take away is on sorting. So on Shane's point, if everything gets sent into a compact truck, it's all mixed together. There's no way to pull out the different materials and recycle them properly. So that's going to bring us to our next question on how can we be sorting better on productions? And Daniel put a good question in the chat here related to the role of the union and training members. I'm going to ask Joe or Laura to weigh in on that question and whether there is a sort of achievable kind of training that we can provide to make sure that everyone on our sets has that information on sorting and is making it easier for those waste pickup vendors to then bring those sorted materials to the right places. So let's start with Joe, and then we'll go over to Laura on some thoughts there from the onset perspective.
Yeah, well, I feel the union does have a place. And I also want to give a shout out right now. IATSE does have a good environmental group. And I feel that a lot of the gains that we have made in Toronto, these people were behind it, behind pushing, behind getting better paints, getting better recycling of paint, getting the food, a lot of the food organics programs, and then trying to redo. I think that a lot of that was sparked by some union input. I don't believe there's anything formal set up, and I'm not sure why, but on an amateur and a volunteer basis, IATSE 873 anyways is pretty strong in pushing it.
Super. Laura, do you have an Atlantic perspective on that?
Yeah, no, as Joe's saying, it's really imperative that there is accountability in each production, so that there is someone in the role of a consultant or an eco department or sustainability advisor, so that prior to any production meeting, there is a strategy conveyed to the production company, so that from it's the crew that will make the difference, but it needs to come from the top. And once the crew understands that every little element of their behavior makes such a significant impact as a group. And if these sorting bins, as Kelsey's saying, you start off with the simple 3 bins and you just evolve into sort of learned behaviors that become second nature, and at incremental steps that ultimately allow for those haulers to take the right path, so to speak. Because if those sorting bins are contaminated, of course, then we all efforts are lost. So we also have to be very cognizant of what's acceptable in terms of PFAS and in composts. There's a whole lot of arising issues. So as remarked earlier, we all need to be very agile, because these are all evolving processes. Mm-hmm. And I think in order for a successful trajectory, we all have to have very coordinated efforts among the likes of those in the panel and those observing today. It really requires a whole lot of that effective collaboration.
Yeah.
If I could just add to that, because Aaron I saw Aaron's chat. The DGC here in Ontario and across Canada, is doing some amazing training and are really putting out. They've put out a carbon calculator, and Marion Wehack is trying to get a training course where to work with designers in how to do a set by reusing other set pieces. Like just what type of thinking that happens. Yeah. So they're making great headway, and I think it's a little more formal than what IATSE's got, but the DGC has that set up.
Can I add something?
Yeah, I know Marion is heroic in her efforts, and I'm the chair of the regional DGC in Atlantic Canada, and we're getting there for sure.
Kelsey?
Yeah, so here in BC, Creative BC Real Green created a course called the Carbon Literacy course. It's free to all the film industry here. So people can take that course. I think they were doing it monthly, but I'm not sure anymore. But the DGC and 891 here too also have like really strong groups of sustainability people. And we have a really large group of sustainability people that have been trained to work in the film industry. So a lot of the productions that we work on usually have a sustainability rep.
Great. And so that's all around, the last couple of answers have been around training people on set to understand the value of sorting, that it's not just kind of this extra thing we're asking everyone to do, but it really is that first step to making sure that things are going to be more circular, entered into that loop where we can be reusing it, recycling it, and that only starts if we've sorted it and separated it properly. So real key takeaway on finding ways, whether that's through a professional vendor or through training or through, you know, some of the excellent resources that we have, you know, available from DGC and from IATSE and from Real Green and the provincial film commissions, everyone, Ontario Green Screen, everyone's working on great resources. So whatever, you know, whatever method works for you as a producer and that your specific production, find ways to emphasize the importance of sorting, because that really is step one. We're going to go to step two in the flow now. So if you have sorted things well, that means that we're able to process them in the right ways. And so I'm going to go first to Arjun to hear a little bit about the power of plastic recycling. Plastic gets a pretty bad rap, as Shane mentioned, but it actually has an enormous potential. And then we're going to go to Aaron also to answer the same question about wood. So when we're sorting and recycling it properly, how does this process reduce the material waste and reduce the impact of these materials?
Yeah, thank you. So one thing I want to start off by saying is, if people are saying that there's a lot of plastic out there, I don't know what they're talking about. I don't see it. I'm not getting it. I need as much plastic as I can get my hands on, and I'm not currently getting it. At our Listowel facility alone, we currently process about 50,000 tons of plastic scrap per year. Okay, that's not a lot of volume. It's 100 million pounds. It's not a lot of volume, but I could tell you that about 55% of our total capacity comes from Canada, and this is between Alberta and Newfoundland, and the remaining 45% is imported in from the US, and that's a problem. And really, if we had to look at the source of the problem, the sources, we're not necessarily sorting properly. A lot of the plastics go to landfill. They're litter. It's not coming to us. All post-consumer recyclers together, there are maybe 6 or 7 recyclers all across Canada. We're fully able to, completely eat up every scrap of plastic that is placed in the blue box. We'll absolutely take everything that's in there, and we're recycling. We're doing it today. We have been doing it for the last 10 years, or if not more. We're not getting enough. Therefore, we end up going to the US. If you look at any of the trade magazines on the waste management side, you'll see lots of reports that says Canada is the largest importer of plastics from the US. Our US is Canada is the largest. The US exports the largest volume of scrap plastics to Canada. This is since 2018, and so this is a problem, and really all this stems from is improper sorting. If you could actually sort at your sites, if you could ensure that recyclables are all placed in the recycling bin, and then ensure that the correct responsible hauler is brought in and they capture that material, it can ensure that it comes to a recycler like us. And then when it comes to us, you can be rest assured that it gets processed and gets processed into another product that gets that's basically back into one of those containers, whether it's a detergent bottle or a yogurt cup or whatever the case may be, and at the end of life, that plastic can come right back to us. That's all I can say.
And when we are recycling that material better, it's therefore requiring less virgin plastic, less oil to be, tapped and processed and turned into plastic. Because
yes.
Plastic is in some ways an infinitely recyclable material. And if we did have the right amount or an increased amount of plastic material in recycling, we would rely less on fossil fuel virgin material. Is that correct?
That's correct. So yeah, we compete with virgin resins. Our competition is virgin resin. We every manufacturer that we work with, our pitch has been, look, why don't we reduce your input of virgin resin, and we can replace it with recycled resins. And yeah, like Shane said before, we're about 68% less greenhouse gas emissions from using recycled resins over prime resin. And I wouldn't say it's infinitely recyclable. It's been really difficult for us to really track that also. So I don't know if it'll be infinitely recyclable. I can for sure tell you we've been able to recycle some of our own parts at Exiplast about 4 times for sure. I don't know. I don't know if we can do any more than that, because there is once it's gone past a fourth, maybe if you really push the 5th time, it does degrade its ability to be recycled. You know, it does go through multiple heat cycles, and then we're not necessarily able to recycle. But but then again, you know, we're not necessarily. We do know that every time it goes through a recycling process, it does get degraded a little bit. But I don't know for sure that I can't confirm that infinitely recyclable.
It may have been a superfluous word choice for me, but if we are recycling plastic materials even 4 times, we can imagine the reduction in the need for virgin resin.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Going over to Aaron for wood. Do you have a sense of the impact of recycling the wood and maybe more broadly to the other vendors, other materials when these are being processed properly?
Yeah, I'm going to share here an example diversion report, and we provide these for each of the productions, and this one happens to be an older one just because it's what I had at hand. This was a very small test case. In fact, it was a TV series where the foreman and the lead carpenter said, I don't know, but okay, have at it if you think you can do something. So we took 166 pieces of wood and we measured what that impact. It actually was in a tiny utility trailer that's been parked over in the back of the yard for a while. But we measured the impact of just one sample box basically of wood, and that represents 507 kilos of CO2, or about 2,400 kilometers. That's what 23 trees absorb. And it also happened to save money compared with a civic landfill. In this case, we were able to use 100% of the wood because that was back in the day when we actually pulled every nail and every staple out. But now we're okay to say we'll happily process 30, 40, 50, 60%. Now, if I flip over to another screen that I'm not able to share, I will tell you the following. For one TV series from a major network, they were able to say, yeah, we'll try this out. Over the season, they ended up actually saving $1,200 versus the status quo, and 16,000 kilometers reduced from their transpo, 160 trees annual CO2 absorption. And if all of you go on our website right now, urbanjacks.ca, you will see that every day our carbon impacts are pushed out so that it's fully transparent, because we count every board and we can tell you how and what we recycle our waste with. We can say that this is actually how much has been given a second life, and how much, even for the economy, how much virgin lumber is able to say go on to another source, because it's really that simple. If you go back just a few years, people were throwing everything, cardboard, glass, plastics, into one bin. And how would you feel now if you saw somebody flicking a cigarette butt on the street? How would you feel if you saw somebody putting something in the mixed waste bin? We'd say, oh, they don't know better. But our kids and people I work with say, hey, pick that up. You can't park there. So just do the right thing. It's not that hard. And the carbon adds up, unless, like Shane said, it was so brilliant. If they're not willing to show you, call green BS.
Yeah. So asking for that transparency is really key. And for productions that are looking to reduce their footprint, I mean, I know everyone is sort of abstractly looking for ways to make their productions more sustainable, but if you have a mission or even a mandate to reduce your your production's footprint, recycling these materials, as Aaron just showed us in that example, has a real impact on your footprint, on the emissions that are coming out. So if you can recycle that wood, you're taking out X amount of emissions from your carbon footprint. You know, right now we're working on trying to get productions just to measure their carbon footprint and use it as a baseline. But the next evolution in that is to look at all of the line items and see where you can reduce it. And so we're seeing from these examples that you are reducing the emissions by making sure these materials are getting recycled. I want to go to a different phase of a production's workflow. We're going to go to the design phase for a second. We've heard a couple of the speakers talk about that. We're going to go to Laura and Joe. Laura, you as a production designer think a lot about how you're designing and what kind of materials you're bringing on. And Joe, as a construction coordinator, you are in charge of designing things and making sure that you are, as you said, reducing the amount of materials that you're using, but also reusing, finding ways to reuse existing materials. So where does that play in the design phase, and what is important for producers to take away as they're planning their next productions?
So yeah, no, very important question. And I think what many would presume is that if you, as a designer, whatever art director, set designer, are tasked with, if the more challenges you have with respect to material offerings, the more fulfilling the exercise as a designer. Good designers can make silk from a sow's ear, and I think the ethical direction of film production really demands us as designers in every department, whether it's wardrobe or set design, to consider ethical choices, and rather than introduce virgin materials, whether they're secondhand, rented, or upcycled through the manipulations with Arjun, Joe, or Aaron, i.e. they could be plastics and wood, but obviously at all costs avoiding carbon heavy products like styrene, polystyrene, and different levels. There are more equitable, more sustainable versions of polystyrene, but they're all pretty toxic. So if we as designers, with the endorsement of production, can challenge the status quo of past methods, we all win. And but as I said earlier, it really does require understanding what's available and demanding availability of more sustainable product. And here in Atlantic Canada, there's not a whole, we don't have the advantage of the density of population and industry that exists in Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver. We just don't have that same warehouse opportunities, but I think there are comparable warehouse solutions, and that's kind of what I'm hoping in part to initiate with some of this research we're doing this summer. So yeah, no, I could go on at great length, but I think it's an opportunity for designers. I don't think it's a barrier at all. I think there's a lot of really great solutions, and they aren't all just AI or the virtual sets, but real sets.
Mm-hmm. Joe, how do you bring in the concept, the age-old concept of reduce, reuse, then recycle? So first we need to reduce our consumption, then look for reusables, and then as a last resort, recycle it. How does that apply for the way that you do your work?
Well, as Laura suggested, but so much of it starts with the design team I'm working with, from the designer. Some, they've known me long enough, and as long as I can deliver the product that they want, they don't care how I get it, whether I scrounge from a bin or reuse, or they don't care. So that's great. But what's best is if you have designers, and I've worked with a few recently, that start with this idea. They want to cut back. They design with this in mind. We often say to design with a modular system. That word modular scares a lot of designers off, because we have saws. We can turn anything into a modular. We can cut walls out and replace here. It's just it's that mindset of knowing that you're going to reuse this set 5-6 times by taking the windows from here, putting new windows, taking those over there, taking a bay window out and putting French doors in quickly. And then just by little minimal changes, you can reuse an apartment set, let's say, or a police precinct or anything. You can reuse it. So those are obviously the most efficient and the best ones to work with that start with that in mind. But there's some designers that are afraid if you start saying, I'm going to see if I can get some stuff from other shows. I don't know. They're worried that people are going to notice set pieces.
Right.
I find that they don't. I find, in fact, more recently, I've learned that I think you can even use what I would call iconic pieces again and again, and you use them in a different spot, and no one's ever going to notice. So it just really, that's why these talks that we're having here today for production, because so much of what I can accomplish starts with the design.
Right. And what are the budget implications of that? Is it more expensive to go and find these materials? Does it save you money? Like, how does that work for a producer who we know, we're always hearing, okay, well, is that going to cost me more money, or how does that work?
Well, I don't think, I think it's economical. I've, you buy I've bought entire sets. We've reused them totally, or reconfigured them, I mean, in a way that no one would ever notice. But that saves big money. And I find what happens, and there's sometimes you get a hint of this from some union members. They think that, oh, they're taking work away from people because I'm buying already made sets. But I tell you that inevitably, that money doesn't leave the art department. We just actually end up being able to do more with our money.
Yeah.
I remember on Glamorous, we bought an entire bar, and that allowed us to do these really funky wooden curved ceilings that we didn't have the money for before, but by saving money there. So I think on the whole, yes, sometimes some FSC lumber and other choices I make may cost a little more, but I think in the long run, there's the way of thinking of how I'm attacking it will save them money.
Yeah. And what about on the other end? So when we're wrapping out a production and we have all these materials, we've talked a lot about the materials that are going to go to a hauler, whether that's, Kelsey, Shane, Aaron, or, your go-to waste hauler that you're now going to ask for more transparency from. But what about the materials that can just stay within the film industry? Like you're reselling those to other people, you have your own networks. Can this be elevated in some way? I know that, department heads often have made their own networks and have these sort of mini circles that they're in to do this material exchange. But how can we support that? How can we grow that? What's a barrier to making that bigger so that we can actually just reuse those materials, offload those to another production that will use them?
I think the barrier, it comes down to a few things. Timing. If I know a show's starting up as I'm ending, well, that's great, because then I can just pass a lot of stuff. You're right, Angelica. There is an informal amongst coordinators. There is an informal. We phone each other now, and it's really good. Actually, we're checking on each other. Like, are you starting up? Can you use this? Can you use this? So there's informal. But this, as I had mentioned earlier, there's a group of us in Toronto. Marion Wehack's on that. Zena Harris, Aaron is involved, and a number of people. And we're really trying to. What the holdback is, it's not a good business case if you're holding on to this stuff for a while and waiting for people to come. So we need some help, either through governments or through through the city. We've talked to them, just some help for a warehouse type space that we could use, and then that way, even if the show's not starting up right away while I'm ending, I could send that stuff there, and then people could go pick that up for free. That would be the way we would like to operate it.
Right. I want to open the floor to our attendees, the producers and the visitors that are participants that are listening in today. Feel free to come off mute, raise your hand, put a question in the chat. What questions do you still have? Like, what has this conversation prompted for you? You know, we're hoping you're able to take this information and really apply it to the next production that you have, but what is still standing in the way of that? So if you think about that for a minute and raise your hand or write in the chat, what questions you would still want answered before you could, you know, say, okay, great, I have all the information I need to go and implement this on my next production. And in the meantime, I'm going to scan the questions to see if we have any that have been unanswered here. While we're waiting for questions, Shane, I'm going to ask you one really specific question because we haven't spent a lot of time on it. Organics. Obviously, we saw on that starting slide that food makes up a large portion. To answer Joe's earlier question, I think that was an average across, you know, a large variety and genre of productions. So, you know, docu and different genres are going to be food heavy compared to material, but regardless of the exact percentage of that in the material waste data, Shane, maybe you can tell us a little bit of the right way for a production to think about handling their organics, and I'm still going to hope that the producers will you know, think about some questions to put in the chat while you answer this.
Yeah, thank you. So I'll expand on that, and actually it does two things. So Joe's question about like how is organics creating so much emissions, but as well the conversation about design. And so we had pitched a pilot. So as the company grew and we learned more, and particularly in the way of organics and waste, well, in traditional solid waste, the biggest impact you can have is keeping organics out of the landfill. Because if you don't know, I mean, most people do, I think most of the people here, but organics go into a landfill and they decompose and they create methane gas, and that escapes into the atmosphere, and it's 26 times worse than, you know, tailpipe emissions. And so the funny thing is you can't get a carbon credit for diverting organics from a landfill, but you can buy a carbon credit for a methane gas capture coming off of a landfill. So they're incentivizing for this stuff to get in there. And so the other thing I would say, but where the emissions factor comes from food on set, is we live in a world of abundance, not just in the film industry, but, you know, when COVID happened, everybody went to, as opposed to, it's escaping, other than a buffet style and plates, we went to packaging. And so the challenge now is, if we've gone back to buffet style, you know, there's excess food because we don't want anybody to be hungry. I can tell you that the hand sorting that we do, and I would say that from the film industry, many of the caterers are the worst culprits, because everybody's wrapping up at the end of the day and we're picking up garbage bags that are full of leftover food. And they're not even in green bags. And then also the people on set, when they're having the meals, is they might not eat everything that's there. And so we literally peel off a burger wrap, you know, like the tin foil with the white paper on the inside. And so we were a big advocate of compostables for a long time, because if somebody didn't want to eat their meal or half their meal, they could just throw it in the green bin and it can go off to compost. But back to the design piece. So Joe, all of this carbon accounting that we did is we wanted to set up a pilot, and most people know that beef is bad, right? And but when we did the numbers on it, like, it's exponentially worse. And we were walking on the set. I was walking with Louise Pollard on the set of Murdoch Mysteries. She's like, how do we like really move the needle? And I was like, well, what if, like, when you go into McDonald's, you have the calorie count? What if we had the carbon footprint of the meal? And then when people were selecting their meal, you don't force anybody to do anything, because try and take a steak away from a meat eater and they'll kill you and eat you. And I'm saying that in jest. I eat far less meat, but I still eat meat myself, right? But give them the choice and do the education process. And that's where the carbon footprint comes from, is all of the food that we're actually consuming. But through the education piece, maybe we can reduce that, because people will eat less red meat, right? But the pilot that we're trying to set up goes back to the design phase, is like, we would love for a production to work with us. And we found a caterer that we work with. And and they will provide the food. Friendlier is a reusable packaging operation that I believe is in BC as well. And so they track the reuse of the containers, and they're plastic. And so after whatever 100 uses, the stuff would actually be recycled, right? And then the food is going to be delivered in electric vehicles. The food would be rescued with a local rescue agency, and we would pick all the waste up and the packaging in an electric vehicle. So I'm putting that out there, but that goes back to the waste guy at the end of the production is figuring out how to fix the thing at the front of it. And Kelsey's smiling, and I'm sure she gets it too. She shakes her head when she sees the stuff, and it's like everybody puts in so much effort and everybody cares so much, but you guys are busy. And so if you don't start from the finish, then we get stuck with it at the end. And I'm happy to work on either end, right?
Can I add to that? So here in BC, we have, you can actually donate food from the film industry and be protected under the BC Good Samaritan Act. We tried to start a food donation program with fridges. So we supplied all the film industry with fridges when they wanted, and then we collect the food and drop it off. But we realized that it's just as easy for them to wrap it up and bring it straight to the nonprofits food donation places. So we actually came up with a huge list of places that accept food 24 hours a day. All you have to do is literally right after lunch, wrap it up, label it, bring it, and drop it off. And it's so simple. But yeah, that's I'll get full pizzas in our recycling, and I'm like, are you kidding me? And there's actually a food rescue too. I think it's just foodrescue.ca. But you can also put that up on, if you're in the office, hey, we have a bunch of food, this is what it is, and then people can come and rescue the food. But I'm finding even the caterers they're starting to reuse a lot of stuff in say soups or whatever. They're trying to do the reusable as much as possible. I think Claire George did reducing red meat week or whatever. She was you can only have red meat once a week or something like that. So yeah, there's a lot of awesome food things going on here.
Initiatives. Super. Yeah, I think the idea to just wrap it up and have a preset list of organizations that will accept it, I think that's within reach. And again, that's almost a zero cost initiative for producers that are going to be budget tight. So that's a great way to get that food to people that need it and that can use it and completely avoid the waste stream entirely. I want to go to Daniel. Daniel has his hand up here. And then we have a question in the chat from Jill, and then we'll do a time check because I just want to make sure we're not keeping anyone over the half hour. So Daniel, please go ahead with your question.
Hey, thanks. So just my question, I always ask a lot of questions about terminology and what things and words mean. And I think that this webinar has done a good job of clarifying and really trying to accurately describe what we're doing. And I only mention this because I am a professional in the waste management industry as a consultant. I do a lot of waste audits and impact assessment studies for large organizations and institutions. And I've adopted the term waste reduction and prevention consultant rather than waste management consultant, because I find that waste management has this sort of ceiling, right? Where just what Shane mentioned, if there's no thinking around it at the start and you try to deal with it at the end, it just doesn't work. And so really curious to hear what are the thoughts around the terminology waste reduction and prevention rather than waste management to help really shift the focus away from just trying to get stuff into the right bin to pushing up the thinking and the design stream to what materials are we using in the first place and why, and then how we can work on reducing and preventing each one.
Yeah.
Where we can, right? You still got to build sets.
I'm going to give one answer from my own experience, actually, because I think this is a really great example. But we have done a lot of work to make those changes upstream to kind of address all of the issues that you just flagged. And making these changes with your vendors, having these conversations with your vendors is a really good way to take the onus off of crew necessarily to all of a sudden change how they're doing something on set. We know sets are really busy. We know that feels like a hard thing to do, to change behavior on set. So having those conversations, can we switch to compostable packaging? Can we Can we not have food packaging at all? Can we just do cutlery and dishes, and that goes back and gets washed and comes back the next day? You know, those are a couple of craft examples, but you can apply those to other vendors as well. And again, even if they don't have the solutions right away, asking the question and telling them that this is something that you will want in future, and can we work on a solution together? Or maybe you can go away and come back next time with an idea for me. That is really powerful as well, even if the solution isn't immediately available to someone. So I think for producers, especially, those kinds of decisions happen early on with their department heads and with vendor conversations as well.
Yeah, I just want to echo that. Putting things in the contract is really, really important in terms of clarity on, say, for example, access to downstream service providers and traceability, things like that.
Yeah. We have a question in the chat from Jill, and sorry, Laura, I know you have your hand up. I just want to make sure that Jill's question is answered, and this might be a good question for you. Any recommendations for the best ways to source upcycled, recycled PCR materials to use in production? And we'll start with Laura if you have some thoughts on that.
I missed the last part of that. To source what kind of materials? Sorry.
Source upcycled, recycled, and PCR materials for productions.
Yeah, and I think clearly, repeating myself, but identifying what exists in your region and having that resource available for producers, and obviously each region is different, and I think also they need to be categorized with a hierarchy of which ones are actually truly sustainable and green versus ones that are greenwashed. I think there has to be some scrutiny from the likes of us who understand the industry, rather than there has to be some sort of adjudication, so to speak, so that there isn't just this a cache, CACHE of so-called vendors. It has to be really quite carefully scrutinized. I did, if you don't mind, I wanted to suggest the idea of waste management. I think so many of us regard the subject waste, etc., as one that we want not to. It's difficult to glorify it, but it occurred to me that the concept of film surplus. So if products are, if reusable products exist after a production expires, so to speak, then there is surplus materials. It's not waste, and there really is very little actual waste. Most of it are materials that are surplus to the use.
I love that in terminology. That's great. Yeah.
So I think psychologically it allows us to really imagine the value, rather than it's not even upcycling it, but rather acknowledging the inherent value. Yeah.
So true. Erin, you have your hand up. You're going to give us our final thought of the session today. We are at 1:30, and I want to make sure we're not keeping everyone too late.
What an inspiring conversation. I wrote down a few notes because the best part about being on a panel is being able to learn, because it's such a good use of time. Kelsey and I spoke around 8:30 this morning, excited about the day, thinking about how much we've got to do, and I really enjoyed this meeting. So even if it was noticed as a reuse, whether it's food, any scene, or wood, that should be celebrated. We get what we measure. Services cost to enter a market. We're artists. Yes, we're in unions, but we're people. We need to be paid for our professional services, the innovation, the great work that's happening. So in summary, I think I wrote down a few sort of cornerstones. We've got to inspire. You can do this. Less of see something, say something, more like, hey, this isn't Karen, but we do this, we don't do that. Recognize IATSE, DGC, Rethink, all of you guys, these are credentials. These Creative BC, Ontario Green Screen, they're putting it out there. Just go do it. And finally, score the progress. That's what we do. Can do is about you, me, together, what we can do. We're Canadian. It's not elbows up and fighting. We love our industry, but we do this We don't do that. And so people like you guys who say, yeah, we'll do it, that's how we get it done. Less of the layers to the buyers. If we have 3 layers between me and Joe, it's not going to happen because somebody wants to say, I've saved $13. Well, what about this? What about that? So Shane, everyone else here, my info is public. Reach out and we'll do this, but we do it together. And let's look at surplus resources. I love that, Laura. There's a lot of surplus. It's not waste, but there's a lot of drivers sitting around waiting for something to move. Maybe we can look at turning off their engines. Maybe we can look at these things, like spend some money on the people who give a darn. And that's all of you. So thank you very much for listening to our show.
An excellent closing statement. Thank you, Aaron. I want to thank all our panelists today. You shared a lot of great stuff with us. There's a lot of passion in the group. Thank you, everyone who sat through the session and listened and asked questions. And even if you didn't ask questions, I saw lots of people taking notes, and I'm sure there's some interesting things to think about for takeaways today. If you have any other questions, you can follow up with us at Producing for the Planet. We'd be happy to connect you with the panelists. I think a lot of them shared their links in the chat today. So feel free to reach out and ask any questions, and let's find new ways to handle our film surplus. I think everyone's really excited about that term. So thank you everyone, and we'll officially close the panel now.